Lesson 4.5 is on completing the square, and so we have 3 steps that we need to complete the square. The first step is to move all terms involving x to one side of the equation, and everything else needs to be by itself on the other side. The second step is to take half of the x term. We're going to square that number, and then we're going to add that to both sides. And then the final step is to rewrite the side involving x, and then we're going to solve the equation. So first of all, we're going to look at this one. X squared plus 10x minus 11 equals 0. This is a quadratic. We could graph this. We could factor this. Now we're going to complete the square. So there are multiple ways to solve quadratics. This one actually factors fairly easy, but we're going to go ahead and use completing the square. So the very first step was to collect all terms involving x on one side of the equation, move everything else to the other. So I'm going to go ahead and move my 11. So on the left side now, you're going to want to kind of write this as I do, plus 10x. I'm going to leave a big space here, and that's going to equal 11. Okay? That was step 1. Step 2. Which term is the x term?
X.
10x, that's the x term. We're going to take half of that number. So we're going to take half of 10. What's half of 10? 5. I'm going to square it, and then I'm going to add it to both sides. So I take half of 10, I square it, and I add it to both sides. That's step 2. Step 3 is to write this in factored form. So the reason why I didn't take 5 squared and say that it's 25 is because right now I'm going to write that as a quantity squared. And the quantity squared that it's going to be is whatever the first term is. And can somebody guess what the other one will be? Whatever the last term is. Now, before some of you panic and say, what happened to the 10x? Because I know it's coming.
What happened to 10x?
Let's do this real quick. If I were to multiply out x plus 5 squared, x plus 5 times x plus 5, what you would do is you would do this. Oh, that's x squared. Oh, that's 5x. Oh, that's 5x. And then you'd be like, oh, that's 25. Okay, so really, I haven't lost the 10x. I've just factored it. Okay, so the 10x is still there. It's just in factored form. Okay. So then now on the right side, all I have are some numbers. Okay. So on the right side, what is 5 squared? 25 plus 11 is 36. All right, so now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and solve that. So to solve that, what do you think you're going to do? What do you think you're going to do to solve that for x?
I don't.
What do you think you're going to do to solve that for x?
Take it times the square.
Take the square root.
Take the square root. Now what's the important thing whenever we take the square root that we learned yesterday?
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now when you take the square root of something squared, what ends up happening is that those two things cancel. And that leaves me with x plus 5. On the right side, I've got plus or minus root 36. But what is root 36? 6. Now how would I solve that for x? Minus 5. So on the left side, I'm left with x equals. On the right side, this is how you need to write it. Negative 5 plus or minus 6. So always put the number you added in front of the plus or minus. Reason being, it's going to be easier for us to find the answers. Because the answers right now, the first answer is going to be -5 plus 6. The second answer will be -5 minus 6, because that's what this plus or minus means. All right, so -5 plus 6, -5 plus 6 will give me 1. -5 minus 6 will give me -11. So those are our two solutions. Now just for kicks, I've got x squared plus 10x minus 11 equals 0. Just for kicks, how would I factor that? Two factors of 11 that differ by 10. What are they? 11 and 1. How do you get a positive 10 from 11 and 1? Positive 11, -1. So really this is x plus 11 times x minus 1 equals 0. So our two solutions, factored form, here will give me -11. This one will give me +1, which is exactly what I got completing the square.
Yeah, I like those better.
Okay. Now this one factors nice. Okay. The reason why we looked at it is because the answers do come out nice and neat. The benefit of completing the square, it is longer, but it will always give you an answer. Factoring does not always work. Okay. Factoring does not always work because with completing the square, sometimes we're going to get some square roots in there, and you'll see that as we progress. So let's go ahead and look at another one. X squared minus 10x minus 24. First step,
Plus 24.
get all, add 24, get all terms involving x on one side, everything else on the other. Next step,
10x.
Okay.
By 2.
Yep.
Or
in this case it's actually a negative 10x. Half of negative 10 is
-2.
-5. So now this is going to be how I write this. Now I know this is going to look kind of weird, but trust me, it will save us some grief in a little bit. Now on the left side, do we remember we write this in factored form? What's going to be my first term in the parentheses? X. So the first term will be x. What's my last term going to be? Net -5. Good. That's why we put the negative and attached that there, is because otherwise you would have just put +5 and you would have been off. Okay? So equals 24 plus -5 quantity squared. What is -5 quantity squared? 25. So what is 24 plus 25? 24 plus 25 is? 49. Next step. Square root. Important thing to remember when I square root? Positive and negative. On the left side, you have x minus 5. On the right side, plus or minus 7. Yep, good. What? Oh, okay. So what do I do now? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's what I thought you said. You said +5. You're right. That's
I don't know
exactly.
if it was right though.
Yes, that's right. So I get x to equal. Somebody tell me what the right side's going to look like? 5 plus or minus 7. Excellent. Okay? So,
Was Lindsay in?
okay, so now I have 5 plus or minus 7. So that gives me a solution of 5 plus 7 and 5 minus 7. So my two answers are 12 and -2. so let's go ahead and look at the next one. Okay. So on the next one, we notice there's something different here.
2x
There's a 2x squared. Now I'm going to warn you. Your x squared has to be 1. So since it's not 1 here, we have one additional step. What do we need to do? Divide by 2. Good. So divide by 2. So I get x squared minus 7 halves x plus 5 halves equals 0. Now what do I do?
Minus 5 halves.
Minus 5 halves. So I end up getting x squared minus 7 halves x equals negative 5 halves. Okay, now up until then, taking half had been kind of easy, but I'm going to show you a trick that works here. The easy way to take half of negative 7 over 2 is to multiply the denominator by 2, because that's the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. So if I multiply the denominator by 2, what do I get? I get
7
negative 7/4. Don't lose the negative. Okay, negative 7/4. So I'm going to go ahead and add that here. So on the left side here, what am I left with? X minus 7/4 quantity squared equals. So now we need to add these together. So first of all, negative 7/4 squared is 49/16. Okay. Negative 5 halves. Okay. Negative 40/16. So if I add negative 40/16 and 49/16, I get 9/16. So what do you do now?
Square root.
Square root. So now here these are gone, and you're left with x minus 7/4 equals plus or minus. Now this is the easy way to do that. What's the square root of 9? 3. What's the square root of 16? 4. So see how that works? And then now, next step is to do what? Add 7/4. So I end up getting x to equal 7/4 plus or minus 3/4. So let's split that up. 7/4 plus 3/4 and 7/4 minus 3/4. So what is 7/4 plus 3/4? 10/4, which is 5 halves. Okay, 7/4 minus 3/4. 4/4, which is 1. There you go. Okay, we're going to call that good for today. I'll save 3 problems for the other class. Okay, but what you can go ahead and do is start working on your assignment. Okay, and we will actually do an extra problem. We'll do some more problems on Monday. But you can go ahead and start working 30 through 46, the evens on page 260. Now, there should be less than 10 problems. You should be able to get a good start and get most of them done based on what you've learned today.